Back again with our rapid fire videos. A lot of times you can click on several different pages where people are describing what ALS is and the definition of it. And I'll say this, in 2024, that will mark 150 years since the term amyotrophic lateral sclerosis has been coined, and so it has been around. It's been around the medical community for quite some time now. Just to give my brief description of it, I'll say this: the reason I even started this channel because a lot of people. I tend to try to have a positive outlook on things, and I do believe that is one of the only things you can control in life is your perspective. And I focus my energy on the things that I can control, and so I don't things that are out of my power. I try not to focus too much energy on that, and but I will, have some transparency with you. ALS is a man, it is a beast. Physically, mentally, spiritually, it is challenging in all departments. It is at times it is relentless. And to have a physical debilitating disease, all the challenges that come with it, sometimes can be very hard to describe for an individual. And and that's me being very raw and honest. People brag even to me about my outlook, and I would try to, for the most part, I still circle back to a positive, or I can find light even in dark places. I've learned to do that, especially through this journey. Even me, it can suck, but I've learned that perspective is a choice. I thought I'd say that real briefly, but yeah, there's plenty of information you can look up what it is, how it affects the neurological, what it's doing to the muscles. But anyway, in 2000, and as far as my memory concerned me, I started experiencing symptoms in 2019, at the age of 32, around somewhere in the middle of the year, June, July, or August, somewhere in there. I believe I started experiencing maybe my first, it was a small little twitch in my upper right leg. And then from there, I believe it went from my right upper leg to my left upper leg. And then it was like a ping pong, went from there down, and I started experiencing foot drop. And at that point, by the time I started experiencing foot drop, I had a referral to a neurologist. The neurologist, they did a what they call a nerve conductivity test and EMG test. And then at that point, that neurologist also had ordered a MRI done. And it was a lot of times people have questions about how long did it take to get diagnosed. Even for me, that first appointment I had with my neurologist, he did like he I might have been maybe 3 months. Initially, when I went to a doctor, they thought I was it was a nurse practitioner who said, "Man, you're probably low on electric lights. Just go home, drink Gatorade, and that's what it is, or not what it is." But because of my age, relatively young, healthy, they probably didn't put me in that category quite quickly. And like I said, all I was experiencing at the time was a twitch in my right upper leg. And so they eventually, my PCP referred me to the neurologist. The first neurologist did the first round of testing, EMG, nerve conductivity, and ordered MRI. Nothing showed up on the MRI, brain and spine. And but when he did the nerve conductivity test, they could realize that my nerve conduct or my EMG testing was abnormal. And I remember at that point he was thinking, and I was having foot drop, muscle weakness at that point. That they were like, okay, this is serious, and they referred me to a bigger hospital, the research hospital, and so from there it might have been 4 or 5 months. Keep in mind this is 2020, so when all this stuff is happening, so this is in the midst of the pandemic. My wife is pregnant with our second child, and a lot of hospitals, a lot of things have been backed up. The world is it's very different at that time. Um, and so from then, I think they follow my case and they're trying to watch you. They're watching me over the next. I won't even say. I don't know if you would consider it watching, but they're the way that this stuff works is it. I think that may be the average time for the person to get diagnosed. It may take 6 months to a year because they're looking for several contributing factors to happen. So not only was I having muscle twitching, I was also experiencing muscle weakness, and then at that point, I think he could feel in my legs some actual muscle loss. So they in my leg they were starting to see muscle wasting, and this was might have been 7 months in, 8 months in. I know by the time I was diagnosed October 2020. It probably been from since onset of symptoms, maybe about a year. And actually, I think mine was kind of quickly compared to others. I've heard of some people it may take just depending on your body and how what they can see. It may take a year or two. It's kind of unfortunate thing how long it can take. But yeah, that was kind of my journey of diagnosing. And so from the time I started a first symptom to the time I was diagnosed, maybe about a year. And you'll see a lot of that. I'm gonna try to make these videos kind of quick because I'm gonna probably touch on several more topics very quickly. But my diagnosis, I would say, it was in like a basement, very cold. When I say cold, I mean as far as desensitized from the doctor. You'll see that in a lot of in the ALS community, or it's probably not just our community. Just a lot of times, that's something I encourage with healthcare professionals. And I can imagine. I've worked in healthcare. That you turn people into numbers, and it's easy to. And I won't say easy. I'll say this: I'm empathetic to everyone involved. From a doctor's perspective, I'm sure telling awful news or the most horrible news to people of telling it over and over and over, you have to find some way to protect yourself emotionally. And, I'm empathetic to that. I would just say that there's ways to do everything. And I remember when I would run into young or people in the healthcare world during my journey, and I would encourage them to keep their spirit and remember these are people and human beings. And even though this may not be their first time relaying horrible news to someone, but it is the first time a person's hearing this, or it's the first time this person's experiencing this horrible news. And so, keep that in mind when when you think about your bedside manners and, how you interact with human life. I get it. I realize that there's two ways to look at a lot of this stuff. There's the logical, practical way. We as humans, every living, breathing organism will live and it will die, but there's also an emotional component to it. And I would tell people to keep that in mind when you're dealing with human life. And but yeah, I mean that was tried to keep it short. Well, not so short, but that was that was my diagnosis experience. And so yeah, signing off.